scary box for a spooky good guitar. Welcome back, troglodytes, dear. Hey, wait a minute, this isn't Halloween this time. It's just a guitar that my buddy over in Australia needed me to forward him. Gotta love it when a Buckethead comes in, but wow, that one's looking good so far. Let's see how our headstock is. A little bit yellowed, and it's been kissed by a rose from the grave. And our switch tip, despite still being red, is replaced. But for those of you that haven't seen my previous reviews on these, it's one of my favorite 2010s era guitar. This is the Buckethead Les Paul Signature. And if you think this looks giant on me, that's because it is. These are baritone scale length, 27 inches. Here it is compared to a regular Gibson Les Paul. You can see the size difference. If I remember correctly, it's about an inch larger in each dimension, and they chamber them out, so they're not too much heavier. But due to this oversized body, the extended scale doesn't look as weird on these. So that's why I've always thought these things were fantastic. And you don't even have to use them for dropped tunings. You can put regular 10 gauge strings on here, tune it up to regular pitch. Or if you're a chuggy doomy metal guy, I mean, technically you could use this. But you might also notice that, hey, we've got these cool red buttons on here. These are kill switches. They're great for stutter effects. Bucket uses them to absolute perfection. And then, of course, we've got our cool double white pickups that can also be coil split. Let's see, it's over here. You pull that up, and that gives you really aggressive tones on this thing. However, there's a reason why I wanted to document this one outside of being a forwarding service from the viewer who gifted me this cool Les Paul trophy over here that we see every episode. And that's because it used to be really common for people to get the specs wrong on their Buckethead, because Gibson used to have an old spec page that said these had Richlite fretboards, and that is incorrect for about 98% of the run of Bucketheads. But today, yeah, sure enough, we have a Richlite board one to document. So these were first introduced in October of 2009. The main production runs are from 2010 into 2011. But occasionally you can find a 2012, which is what we're documenting today. Now, what do we know about the 2011-2012 era of Gibson? It's when Richlite gets introduced. It's when ebony is hard for that company to use because of the governmental raids. 2011 through early 2019 is what I consider the Richlite era. This is the time when people will go, I would never buy a custom shop again because they're not even reusing real wood. Which I can totally understand that sentiment when you're buying a regular Les Paul custom. But I've actually grown to quite like Richlite now that it's not forced upon us, because it's a compressed paper material, so man-made, and it's very resistant to humidity changes. So things like fret sprout is way less common occurrence on a guitar like this. And it's a great way to get a nice uniform, even black color. Richlite also can be cool colors, like if you just wanted an all-white fretboard, similar to the phenolic ones that Gibson has done in the past. But that's the initial run of the true signature Buckethead. There was also a studio version done up. Those have a satin finish with a baked maple fretboard. I love those things. They're so velvety smooth. But you can't argue against that really cool black and white look of these true signatures. Another thing that the true signature has maybe going against it is its true nitro and gloss. It ages white a little bit more extremely. Like this is the one I have in my personal collection. Man, he's got a really nice, crisp, clean white one. I mean, outside of the headstock, if somebody just would not have put that clip-on tuner on it and had a safe stand, this is nearly a perfect Buckethead in that aspect. Outside of our switch tip, and I am seeing now that someone has cheekily replaced our nut on this one, but that probably means it's going to play fantastically. But there's something else that's weird about this one. Remember when we documented this 2010, I said, hey, it's one of the earliest produced ones because it's only got the 5-ply binding. Apparently, we need to rewrite the history books. This is a 2012 also with the 5-ply binding. I don't know. That's why you always continue to document things, because just because it was written on the internet long ago that, hey, this is how they are, sometimes you find weird anomalies. But besides just your guitar, you also get a matching Gibson USA case to the stylings that they were making. And yeah, it is oversized. So if you're missing your case, good luck. And as far as remaining original case candy, wow, we got an October 15th of 2012. This has to be one of the latest produced Bucketheads I've seen. Full 3 years after its launch. Let's go ahead and throw it onto the workbench to take a look at the rest of it, see if there's anything else that's different, as well as talk about how you can identify Richlite. Let's go ahead and take a look at these double white pickups. Doesn't matter which Buckethead model you get, it's the same 496R in the neck and a 500T in the bridge. But, wait a minute. Why is that dated October 2013 for both of them? Because this has a sign-off date of October 2012. Unless that's a really weird looking 3, it might be possible that this was restored later on by stealing the pickups out of Baritone SG. I'll definitely be looking really closely at that solder work, but thankfully it's the correct set, so it doesn't matter, not in the long run. I'll never understand people modifying these things. In fact, once I documented one that had Steve Vai's signature pickups in it. I like the orange marker that they're using in here. LPBH for Les Paul Buckethead, and then the neck pick cavity, AW for Alpine White. You can see our short neck tenon, and if you get it in the light just right, you can see a center seam line, so it is a 2-piece maple top that then joins onto our mahogany body that's chambered out. Our pickups within the circuit read 8.33 k ohms in the neck, bridge twice as hot at 14.75, and they play together around 5.5. But remember, you can pull up on your tone to coil split, which gives you kind of a slightly more single coil like sound. It's just basically when you have that high gain distortion on, it gives you a really percussive attack on this instrument. I really like the coil split on the Buckethead model. As far as bridge and tailpiece are concerned, it's just your regular Pingworks branded bridge on the back and a full weight tailpiece done up by API. And outside of our coil split switch, this is your master tone, this is your master volume. Your 3-way toggle switch is down here on this model because you have not 1 kill switch, but 2. If you're wondering, why do you need 2 on the same guitar? It's because sometimes you want to tap it down here, other times you want it up there. But condition-wise, my friend, you are going to love this. It's a really good example. I was not expecting it to be this pure, crisp, and white from the seller's photos. Because that's the thing with these, is it always messes with everybody's white balance on their cameras. But you can see there's some light cracking around our binding. That's very common on these. In fact, usually you'll get much worse finish checking. When I first set it on the workbench, I noticed, oh no, there's like some dings or something. Nah, they cleaned off just fine. The only ding that I saw on the top must have happened during a setup or something. That is a fairly deep one in our clear coat, and there's a small anomaly over here on our binding. And I think it's over on the other edge. We do have a ding on the side, but as far as these Bucketheads go, the more and more time that passes, the harder it is to find clean ones. I said earlier that the switch tip had been replaced. The way you can tell is you gotta look at the shape of it. If it slopes inward, it's not original. Do you see how much thicker and stout an original Gibson one is? It's really obvious when you look at the bottom. I might be saying, Trogly, why was that replaced? It's such a unique part. It's because they break in shipping. These are such highly coveted guitars that go for crazy amounts of money. They change hands quite often. And every time it gets shipped, someone forgets to take it off and then it breaks. And one of the only ways to replace it are those metric ones that are offered on eBay because they're relatively cheap and you just have to ream them out and then they do fit. Our average guy, not even gonna know, but I'm just filling you in because that's what I do on my show. We learn the nitty-gritty details and document originality. Moving on from our mahogany body, 2-piece maple top, we've got our mahogany neck with Richlite fretboard. I'd like to take some additional time here to look at this Richlite board because it's the first one I've ever had. And I'm so proud looking at the internet because just like a year or so ago, everyone was still saying they're all Richlite. But now even Reverb has updated their guide. 2012 switches to Richlite. Everything else is ebony. So it's amazing how, I mean, I can't take all the credit for it, but I am one of the guys that talks about these like every year. But if you're trying to determine whether yours is a Richlite or not, one way you can do it is by feel. If you rub your finger along it and it's nice and smooth, you don't feel anything. Like, don't put a lot of pressure. just very lightly. If it's super smooth and you don't feel any wood grain, you know you have Richlite. Now don't get me wrong, ebony fretboards are known for being smooth too. So if you don't have them to A-B compare it to, it can be quite tricky. But the main thing you're looking for are pores in the wood grain. You see those small holes? That is wood grain. So even though this is a nice smooth ebony fretboard, you can still see that. Whereas back over here on our Richlite board, notice how you do not see that. However, don't confuse these small tooling marks for it. That's why I say it's kind of tricky to tell the difference between the two, but those are some things that you can use to help you determine it. Richlite boards, you're not supposed to clean with your usual lemon oil. Now, if you put it on, is it a big deal? No. That's another way you could potentially tell if you put it on there. Richlite is not going to absorb that none too fast, but an ebony board might a little quicker. But Richlite boards, if you wanted to clean it, all you're supposed to do is use a damp rag and then dry it off. But I've got to say, I like it. I think it suits this model really well because it's not traditional in the slightest to begin with. And its nice and smoothness works out great. A lot of these Bucketheads get sharp fret ends, and this one does not have that problem thanks to the properties of Richlite. But our new bone nut measures 1.7 inches, increasing to about 2.14 at the 12th. First fret neck depth, 0.88 and 0.98 by the 12th. For as big as the guitar is, I mean, the neck could be bigger than it is. It's definitely a full feeling C neck profile shape. However, I would not classify it as the same as, say, an R8 baseball bat, but it is on the thicker side. And we have side marker inlays in our board. But here's the edge of our new nut. You can see they did a pretty good job replacing that. A lot of times you'll get finish cracking and whatnot along here, but there was some small paint touch up here. I can forgive not noticing it on the bass side, but the treble side, yeah, it's pretty obvious. And you can see some mild finish checking where your fretboard actually joins to the neck. Again, very common on these. But overall, that was a really nicely installed bone nut. It almost looks original, but the originals were not bone. But now our headstock. It was almost a perfect example. This is why you don't leave clip-on tuners on your guitar. Not only did he do it once, then go, oh no, it discolored it. Then he did it again, unless he happened to have two on at the same time. But oddly enough, just our truss rod cover sitting on top of there has discolored it. Something about the headstocks. They always yellow before the body even does. But our cover is blank on this one, black and white. And now I've got the strings back on if you want a visual confirmation of how large this thing is. There you go. It truly is a 27-inch scale length. But it really doesn't feel much different because of how much larger the body is. Moving on to the backside. I actually can see a little bit of yellowing to the body right here, whereas the neck is like extra white. I know. Sorry, I don't know how to control this camera when it comes to white guitars. I'm doing my best. But sure enough, yep, this is a restored example. We've got some additional solder globs up here, kind of amateur looking hour stuff over there. But what's important is the original pickups are back in. And oh, yeah, that makes it real obvious. Somebody just has a bunch of electrical tape over the ends so they're not shorting out. So yeah, not the original 496R 500T set, but an era correct set that is double white. You know what? Let me double check here because sometimes people will just put stickers over top of other ones to match it, but that looks like an original set to me. But it looks like they only messed with those as far as the kill switch and other stuff. That looks nice. But moving on from there, we'll take a look at our toggle switch cavity, simply because you don't always see a kill switch installed in one of those. As far as the condition of the back, running the light along it, you've got a little bit of dirtiness down there. It's not too bad. But we've got a small ding right here. The neck joint's looking really good, though. These always get a finish check line right here. This one has a small amount, but usually it stems down and gets really ugly. But again, you can see some more where the maple top kind of ends and the binding begins. And you can see some more finish cracking along here. But as far as these go, again, it's mild. Par for the course based on the ones that I've owned. I was trying to find that ding again. And I guess it was on the bass side. It's right here. Looks like it caught something. And there's a couple of other small impressions over here too. So this particular example is kind of in a weird limbo state. It's technically player's grade. It's got the replaced nut. The pickups have been restored. Solder joints are not original. We've got the switch tip replaced. However, it's maintained such a nice white appearance. I could still see many collectors just going, I don't care. This is actually still white. The clip-on tuner and stand rash really are the worst things on this guitar, even after we've discovered a little bit more. But here's our locking Schaller tuners. And it looks like somebody's underlining things, but that's just the backside of whatever clip-on tuner they were using. But there we go, 257th day of 2012, initial batch production number 676. Our headstock edges are looking pretty good. Those always get beaten in on these things. And another fun fact before we close it back up, we actually still have the protective plastic film over the back plates. Although that's a lot more common than you'd think, because most people don't even realize they're there, so never bother to remove them. Just to make sure this one's not refinished, I am going to do a blacklight test, even though it's not all that old. And because just always love the way those pickups glow under blacklight. It's kind of funny. But everything looks okay on the top, as expected on the front. In fact, I thought those rashes would glow more than that, similar to what we're seeing over here on the back. In fact, I think this one is invisible under regular lighting. I only remember seeing those two. I just wanted to make sure this really white area wasn't a touch-up. But it doesn't look like it. However, in the camera, I can't even see this in person, but in the camera, it looks like we've got some sort of an additional stand rash mark right there. Maybe even a little right here. And we've got a sweat absorption area here. It doesn't look like I missed any touch-up areas. But all said and done, this particular bucket, despite being oversized, is still a good weight, 9.5 pounds. Let's go ahead, plug it in, and hear how this one sounds. Hopefully that gives you a bit of an idea of the tones. You can really hear what I'm talking about, just how bright and attacking it gets in the split mode. But they're just bright attacking pickups in general. They're just a little bit more full and round in their regular position.
But as far as our kill switches, you hear that clicking sound? If you think something's wrong with your guitar, no. If you wonder why you don't hear that when Buckethead does stuff, it's because for whatever reason, when you throw dirt on, it's not as apparent. So yeah, it can Buckethead, but it does other stuff great too. Ah, man, I hate these guitars. Because they ruin all other Les Pauls once you play one. Like, if you're plenty happy with your regular sized Les Paul and you're a taller guy, never touch one of these because you're just gonna have way too much fun. I still think after all these years that is the best sounding Les Pauls ever made. There's something to the Oversized and Baritone, just regular tuning. Everything sounds so much fuller. These things just eat other Les Pauls for lunch. And I don't always love the 496R 500T set in every guitar, but something about the way they split these particular ones. There's magic behind the Buckethead Les Paul, even if you're not playing Buckethead stuff. But if you were scared of the Richlite fretboard on one of these, don't be. It feels actually quite nice. So, Troglodytes, I hope you enjoyed taking another look at a Buckethead. Imagine that, the Trogly's Guitar Show documenting a Buckethead Les Paul. This is what, episode number 8 of the exact same thing, but I have a great time every time I do it. But we gotta get this one shipped off to Australia, sadly. But all right, we'll catch you tomorrow on the next one. Take care. That was fun.